Okay, so we look at Elex at 21:9. I was apprehensive starting this. It took a few hours to properly settle into and find my footing in this world. With a few rough edges, Elex may not grab you immediately, but I can confidently say that after a few hours I became hooked and found myself making time to play it, even in this amazing heatwave we're having when being outside is just too nice. But first, let's have a look at the 21:9 support. Also, on a side note, if after this video you're interested in picking up this game, use the limited time link in the description to get a 50% discount, and it gives the channel a little kickback too. So gameplay correctly shows off more on the sides of the screen at all moments, with no stretching or zooming of the image, and there isn't any kind of fisheye FOV effect, which is fantastic. The extra view applies to all three camera positions you have behind your character. The HUD scales to the sides of the screen, making use of the extra screen space, and screen effects like blood splatters from taking damage also use the entire screen space. Cutscenes are a mix of pre-rendered stretched content and in-game correctly scaling moments. However, conversation views, which aren't really cutscenes, but they aren't really gameplay either, these are zoomed in to fill the screen space, which is a little annoying seeing as they're in-game renders. However, that said, it doesn't affect these moments in any real way, and I'm always focusing on reading the subtitles quickly and driving through these moments fast, rather than looking at the characters slowly talking their way through their lines, so I can't say that I noticed the zoom. The main menu is a little broken with the background image locking to 16:9 with black bars, but with the menu elements shifting to the left hand side, and so extending into the black barred area. But again, whilst not perfect, it isn't at all game breaking. I would of course rather the background image at least zoomed to remove the black bars in these moments. In-game menus are the same, with menu elements shifting to make use of the extra space. However, thankfully the background dark blue color uses the entire screen space. So yeah, they work perfectly, and any menus that are part of like your inventory, skill sets, or the map are locked in a small pop-up box. Finally, loading screens follow the same logic as the main menu, a 16:9 image with black bars, but elements shifting to use the entire screen space. Performance-wise, unfortunately things aren't great. It's an okay looking game. Yes, it has its moments when the light is just right and you're in the perfect location, and in those moments it can look gorgeous, but otherwise it's pretty average. However, I could only just about stick in the 60s at all moments on a GTX 1080 Ti at 3440x1440 on ultra everything settings. It's not badly optimized, and certainly the slightly lackluster graphics have huge benefits with things like loading screens because the game loads beautifully fast even on a hard drive. So whilst I'm not praising the game graphically or optimizationally, I'm not going to be bashing it too much for either reason either. There are at least a good set of graphics options to play with to help make the game run better on your system. I would though have expected a title like this to run much closer to the 80s on my system. General PC support wise, it has both positives and negatives. For example, it lacks settings to turn off depth of field, or to turn down the huge bloom effect that makes it impossible to see anything indoors for a while after you've been outside, as your character's eyes are supposedly adjusting to the indoor light. I can understand the wish for this to be immersive, but it's done too significantly here that it's just plain annoying. You can at least rebind all mouse and keyboard controls, and there is full controller support for those of us who like to play like that. That said, it gets annoying that you can use the B button on your Xbox controller to back out of any menu except for the final main menu screen. To return to the game, you either have to go and select the resume button or click the start button. And this might seem like a small thing, but anyone who uses a controller will know this is a frustrating little nuisance that you'll run into repeatedly when doing things like saving, something you do a lot in this. I also ran into, right at the start, an issue where my controller was working but the game failed to change any of the button prompts to controller icons on screen. So I'd like see the keyboard E button appear instead of the corresponding controller icon. Randomly though, I found the fix was to tab out of the game and back in, and it somehow forced the game to sort itself out. The same issue applies to camera sensitivity settings. I could only get changes to apply after tabbing out and then back in. Very strange, but I hope this helps you. The map also has a weird bug where it runs at a very low frame rate. It simply can't run smoothly for whatever reason, and so makes it not great to pan around. I would like a little optimization for this, please. The last point is my audio levels for my 5.1 surround sound audio were totally off as they drowned out any voices, so make sure you drop all of the sound levels to be able to hear voices properly. Thankfully, you can control a number of different audio tracks independently, so there's no difficulty in fixing this. Okay, so gameplay. Like I said, I feel the first, say 3 to 4 hours are a little bit rough. In them, you are hit with mainly all the unpolished bits of the game, such as the slightly underwhelming graphics, bad lip syncing, slightly clunky controls, lack of objective explanation, amongst a few other things. It feels that it's right here people are easily the most likely to stop playing, believing that they won't be interested in the rest of the game. And it's a shame because not long after you'll really start to feel hooked, and this feeling grows rapidly until you're fully immersed. So yes, it's just a word of warning, push through those first few hours. Don't expect to be sold on it immediately, but I promise there is lots to come. Elex is set in a fictional world called Magellan, which got hit by a huge comet that changed the world forever. Not only did it cause huge destruction to the environment, but introduced a new limited resource called Elex. The resource caused a race between the survivors to harness its power. However, it soon became clear that using Elex in different ways caused both amazing things and terrible things, and factions broke out with varying ideologies as to how the resource should be treated. Unfortunately, those who went as far as possible and physically consumed it to gain immense power also became the world's dominating force that everyone else struggled to fight against. The game centers around you, an ex-Alb, the faction that consumes Elex, as you survive your own execution and are seeking revenge. You have a huge world to explore with wide varieties in storylines, gameplay routes, and such to explore. It really is a big game. The actual world of Magellan is pretty much a post-apocalyptic Earth in many senses, really. It's strewn with what's called the old world technology, which is essentially modern-day cars and buildings, but of course they're all destroyed, and much of the old world information and history is lost to time, with stories and tales of the past all that's really left. I certainly felt some Fallout vibes throughout, but don't worry, it's certainly not a rip-off. From a story and world setting point, this genuinely is fantastic. The post-apocalyptic setting is fully fleshed out with believable stories, interesting characters, tensions, wars, and such like to uncover and both navigate and influence. Being an ARPG by its very nature, it should have all such elements, but so many games nowadays fail to provide truly branching stories or give you any real influence on the world around you. However, this does. Every conversation has multiple routes. How you act, what you say, who you decide to lie to or protect will influence the actions of others and potentially have dire consequences later down the line, with characters building up an opinion of you, whether they like you or dislike you, whether they will step in to fight alongside you or watch you die happily. Controls and animations throughout are generally solid, movement is smooth enough, animations robust enough, but they aren't anything special. If I could ask for some further development, it would be to tie animations together more fluidly instead of having them being quite so distinctly separate. The most sinfully annoying of these being the fall landing animation. Regardless of the height you fall from, you'll do the same drawn out, slow, slight crouch and then slowly rise to standing. It stops any directional movement and cuts you dead in your tracks. Now, I'm not asking for a deep system like Assassin's Creed, obviously, but just an additional animation for when jumping from a reasonable height that isn't going to damage you at all, and simply has you doing a normal human being landing animation, while staggering forward somewhat. It just gets bloody annoying seeing that animation over and over every time, regardless of the drop height, and it kills fluidity. Now, thankfully, to the rescue of movement is the absolutely brilliant Jetpack. It's superbly balanced throughout the game, providing you a vertical movement system that lessens clunkiness in environment build design and creates fun exploration that would otherwise follow the very overly familiar clambering mechanic along clear paths that you see in every other game ever. Combat is difficult. It's certainly not going to forgive your expectations that it'll look after you at the start. No, this game looks to kill you at every moment throughout. And this is most unwavering in the first 10 to 20 hours of the game. And the difficulty isn't just due to enemy difficulty. The combat is a little clunky. There isn't a lot of depth to what you can do with different weapons beyond heavy and light attacks and chaining them in various swings to get the most efficient hits in. That said, there are a lovely range of weapons that cover all kinds of facets to combat. You can imagine, from swords to guns to magic spells, which means combat remains interesting throughout the game, and weapons feel very weighty and hits are satisfying when you make contact. But again, that said, the first 10 hours are very limited in your weapon choice or armor, which can be frustrating, but you'll learn after repeated deaths how to manage the flimsy lock-on mechanic and how to counter enemy attacks. At the end of the day, there is no getting around the fact it's a rewarding system that, whilst not perfect, it is a solid part of the experience, obviously a necessity for an action RPG. You'll move through swords and shields to guns to magic, and each stage is introduced at decently spaced moments to ensure you feel like you're evolving continually and aren't getting bored. Now, one thing that really feels like a dull cop-out design-wise was the choice to make your character a shamefully bog-standard, super deep, gruff, boring voice. There's nothing memorable, interesting, or smart in his design, sadly. I'm not looking for a comic voice or anything, just give me an emotional range reflective of a man who is suddenly coming to terms with having emotions again after having them repressed by his Elex addiction. Sadly though, the emotional range is no more than an old peanut. Missions are built into sections based upon graphical location and main missions. The main missions are obviously the core of the entire game, however they are very off limits most of the time due to difficulty requirements, and on their own they do very little to entertain. What makes the game so great is the side missions, and I hesitate to really place them in this category. They flesh out the world so beautifully. They're built with interwoven connections that create a network of activity throughout each section of the world as you deal with various clans and they wind into other faction missions. Add in the fact that every mission has options and gives you basically story customization. It's not just the main missions that have this. And it does not make life easier to have a conscience, that's for sure. One thing I would like changed with missions though is for a general level recommendation to be attached to them, as too frequently you spend time following up on a mission objective only to get there and die immediately as you realise that you're way out of your league. But yeah, currently there is no way you can know this without physically going to a location, and unfortunately this never goes away as there are so many missions that you'll forget how difficult one was and what you needed to be level wise. So for some missions I've tackled them like 3 or 4 times only to get one-shotted each time and had to run away and come back at a later date hoping that I'm now the right level. But yeah, there's no easy way to find this out, it's just trial and error. Okay, so a few last points to make. When exploring the world, look for teleporters. There's nothing like exploring way out into the wild only to die and have no way to get back without retracing your previous steps. There is generally a teleporter located in any significant location, so just keep searching around and you'll likely find one. There are tons of skills to learn and develop, so make sure you have an idea of what you want to achieve first so you can specialize towards that first, otherwise you'll just generally level everything up together at the same rate, and that takes way too long to get better stuff. You'll get stuck in the very difficult early levels for too long. And yes, keep an eye out at all times. Enemies appear from anywhere at any time, like horrendous spiders burrowing out of the ground. Oh Jesus, I just hate spiders. Anyway, yes, I can happily say that I have loved my time so far with this, and totally recommend picking up for anyone interested in sci-fi, post-apocalyptic environments who want a very big game to delve into for a long time, like 50 plus hours, and a story to care about and craft their own experience from. You'll not be disappointed. Remember, if you want to pick up this game, then use the limited time link in the description to get a 50% discount of the game, and it supports the channel at the same time. I'm going to give this a WAF score of 3. In so many ways, it's perfect 21x9 support, but cutscenes and some menu issues drag it down a little. So I hope that gives you some information how the game runs at 21x9. Give this video a like if you found it helpful, and subscribe for future info. For other games at 21x9, head up to my channel, the WAF website. Hopefully I've covered it. If I haven't, then leave a comment down below and I'll try and cover it. And if you'd like to support the channel, the links to my Patreon page are in the description, and Amazon affiliate links are there too. See you later.